way of doing it. So in Cleveland, swiping a card at the gas station is kind of something that basically everyone does. Matt Jennings, who's from Jenkins, I should say, from the Cleveland Police Department, said this: they're very simple to install. They just take a second or two. And that's kind of the problem. It's not just that the units themselves are illegal, it's the process that is used that makes them illegal, he says. So the units themselves, he's right, are not illegal. There's nothing illegal about the device that you would use to skim credit cards, and making them illegal is not really going to change much of anything either. So there's not really much in terms of argument for that. Oh well, But what is interesting about the whole scenario is that it's easy to do. And we have thieves who are, not particularly intelligent putting these devices in. It's not hard. In fact, I've seen RFID chip readers that you can use that you put in a paper bag on top of the gas station, like on top of the gas pump, and it'll pick up the credit card's RFID information as they get put in. And that's yet another way of getting credit card information. Matt Jenkins says, if you're going to use your card at a pump and it asks for your debit or credit, always use credit, so at least you don't have to use your PIN. Now, that's actually not a solid solution, he says, and nothing really stops you from actually grabbing the card reader, like he says, and touching it, because if they are there, they're going to fall off, and nothing stops you from reaching out there and touching it. And he's right, you might be able to take the magnetic stripe reader off of the unit itself, but yet again, you might not. So what do? Well, my solution is simple. Pay with cash. The best way to not have your credit card information stolen is to simply not use your credit card. And really, it's only going to take a few extra minutes to pay in cash anyway, right? Cash is the best way to pay for things 9 times out of 10. So if you can, you probably should. So the best solution, I would say anyway, is to simply pay in cash. Go inside at the gas station and hand over a few dollar bills or however much you pay for gas, and there you go. Now, I know not all of us actually carry around cash. I only do out of necessity. I don't have a bank account right now. So, not everyone carries around cash. I get that. But maybe we should start getting in the habit. Wallet thefts are not exactly on the rise as far as I know, but because most people use credit cards. What are you going to do with a stolen credit card? You need the signature, you need the PIN, you need all these different things. There's a lot that needs to be done for you to effectively use a physically stolen debit card. Something that is a little bit frightening, though, is the lack of security sometimes. I'll give you an example. Here at the radio station, we needed a new router for our internet connection. So I was the one who was selected to buy the router because I was actually the only other person who worked here at the time. Basically, at the time, it was just me, David Tulis, and Confederate Mike, and we were the only people who had anything at all to do with the station. That was a long time ago, though. Things have changed a bit since then. Things are not nearly the same as they have been in the past, so that is no longer a concern. But I was the person who was selected to pick up this router. It was paid for with a credit card by, I believe, Confederate Mike or somebody bought it. And I was supposed to go pick it up at the Walmart. He bought it online for pickup. Well, okay, I'm not Confederate Mike. Obviously, my first name is not Confederate, although my ancestors were. So I go down to the Walmart, and I'm thinking they're probably not going to give it to me because I can't, sign my name as him because I can't just fake his signature. I didn't learn how to do that yet. So I'm like, I'm probably not going to be able to buy this router. Well, I had already printed out an email that he had given me that's supposed to prove that it's me, but I wasn't on the approved names list. Walmart has a policy where you have an approved names list where only certain people who are on this list can come to pick up the item, and I was not on that particular list. Kind of a problem. Well, anyway, I go down to Walmart and I go down to the customer service desk, and it's pretty early in the morning. It's like 7 a.m. or something. Somebody wakes up and goes over there. He looks like he's about to fall asleep at the desk, and I say, I'm here to pick up this router. And I hand him the card showing that, or not the card, but the piece of paper I printed out saying, one router bought by name here, pick it up and all that sort of thing. And he goes, okay, just sign this. And he hands me a receipt. I write my name on the receipt. He gives me a copy and I get the router. And that was it. Now, it's simple enough to fake things. If I knew, there's all sorts of different ways you could find out this information. But if I somehow got the info that he was buying this particular router and I managed to fake a convincing enough email and then went down there and the same clerk who maybe he's a little bit tired, he didn't pay enough attention, whatever, I'm not calling him out or anything, handed me the router, that's kind of a problem because I basically just stole a router that someone else paid for, and there's not a whole lot of record of me doing it, especially if I go and get a haircut the next day. And then, there's no record of me having done it. And that's kind of a problem. financial security is not exactly on the rise, unfortunately. Financial security is kind of a problem in this day and age because people are not very careful with their money. Simple as that. People are not careful with their money. And that's a problem which we're seeing pretty consistently among the populace here in our country. We don't really think that we'll be the ones who will have our identities stolen, right? I'm not going to be the one. I don't have much money anyway. Well, actually, it's the accounts that don't have a whole lot of money, which they will often target, funnily enough. So it's a problem. It's a real legitimate problem. It's a threat that's facing us here in our area, obviously, because this is happening in Cleveland too. And that's right down the road from where we are right now. Maybe you're in Cleveland. Our signal picks up strong over in Cleveland, by the way. If you're listening on the internet, check us out at 1240 a.m. If your signal's not quite strong enough, well, just stay on 1240.com. It's hotnewstalkradio.com, I should say. Just go to hotnewstalkradio.com and you can listen to us streaming live. Hey, there's going to be a debate next week. There we go. A debate next week on police brutality on Wednesday at 2 p.m. on the Red Bank police indictment. Now, I call it police brutality because my position is pretty well cinched. I know what I think about what happened with the Red Bank police indictment. I tend to be of the belief that he should have been indicted and he did the wrong thing. But we're going to debate that because this is a fair station and we don't have an official stance on this, actually. We're kind of neutral on the Red Bank policeman indictment. Of course, a former policeman, Mark Kaler is his name. And that's going to be 2 p.m. on Wednesday of next week. It's going to be Eric Judd, Confederate Mike, versus David Tulis and me, and Tex and Keon Rose. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 against 2. Well, okay. Well, that'll be interesting anyway. I should say 4 against 2 anyway. So we got them outnumbered by twice as much as what they have. So kind of a problem. It's going to be police brutality or justified actions is the topic. I'm taking the police brutality route. They're taking justified actions. So whatever. Hey, we just did our 4,000th tweet. So check us out on Twitter to see all 4,000 of them. It's really interesting to see a round number on Twitter, and that's going to be ruined as soon as Confederate Mike tweets something else. But hey, whatever. Just go to Twitter and check out all 4,000 of our tweets. The last tweet that we did was 30 minutes ago. It was things to do this weekend. Anti-Islam protests are across the U.S. So if you would like to attend an anti-Islam protest, I'm sure there's one somewhere around this area. And there's all sorts of comparisons between Obama and Hitler, and there's small houses that people keep living in. I see that a lot, by the way, these small houses. Eric Judd was talking about that at 11. And I was listening here, and I'm thinking, man, that guy's right. These small houses are kind of silly. Now, I'm one guy. So I could probably live in a tiny house, no problem. But I don't have a family of 4, right? I mean, come on. If I had a family of 4, I'd be wanting the largest house I could possibly afford, with the most property tax, of course, as well. But I'd be wanting the biggest house I could afford. And really, a tiny house is not falling in towards that criteria. Well, actually, right now it is. Right now, I could only afford maybe a storage unit. But hey, whatever. I could only afford that for about a month. So, oh well. But no, if I were a grown man, a grown adult, not 20 years old, and I had a family, heaven forbid that happens tomorrow, and I, needed a house, I wouldn't be buying a tiny, tiny little house. Now, maybe that fits in with your lifestyle. And, I get it. Fine. You want that to be what you do. You live in a tiny house. That's like your shtick. And you feel cool about it because you're leaving a smaller footprint. But you know what? Industrial materials went into building that house. So that's sort of a footprint there. You're probably driving a car, which is yet again a huge footprint because all the industrial waste that went into manufacturing that particular vehicle. Also, you're probably using public roads, which again put toxic chemicals in the atmosphere when those roads were built. You're probably still buying things at the grocery store, which again, noxious fumes and all sorts of things went into the production of those things. So really, it seems like the footprint is kind of negligible. I do get the effort, though, but for me, it's more of a cost-saving measure than an environmental one. I do care about the environment. It's not that I don't care. I really do. But I'm not as, I guess, ridiculous about it. I would say ridiculous anyway about the environment, as some might be. I don't think it's your moral imperative to live in a tiny house and have a garden and, use solar panels for everything and all that sort of thing. I really don't think that's your moral imperative to do that. But if you can and you want to, and everyone in your home consents to it, hey, who am I to say that that's wrong? You can do what you want. And that's kind of the cool thing about America, right? Is I don't think that it's a great idea, but if you want to do it, you can go ahead and do that. That's the difference between our beliefs and a lot of other people's beliefs, I think, is that we think that it's totally fine for you to think differently from us. I'm actually glad that some people think differently than I do, because if everyone had the same voice, well, it would sound pretty boring, wouldn't it? And that's kind of the problem that we have. It's like all those new metal bands that popped up in the early mid 2000s, late 90s, where it's like you can't tell the difference between like Korn and what's that other freaking band that everyone listened to when I was a kid? Dang, that band! I hate Linkin Park. I don't want to say Leonard Skinner. Like they all sound the same. Come on. You're listening to them, and it's one guy screaming about how, like, some passive aggressive reference to suicide and like some girlfriend who left or whatever. And then he starts screaming about that, about how like, oh, I can't take the pain anymore and all this stuff. And then it's, some heavy guitar with drums and bass and stuff. And then he raps for no reason. Ugh. It all sounded the same. And somehow that got to be like a hit single too, with Linkin Park had like 3 hit singles, and I just didn't get that. And Korn was real big too in the mid 90s. It was just no thanks, man. And that's sort of that's all the same voice to me. That's sort of what a lot of political ideologies are. It's all just the same voice saying the same thing, and you just get tired of it, because it's like, come on. I get I hang out with libertarians a lot, and I tend to be one too. But sometimes it gets tiresome hearing the same arguments over and over and over again. It's like, come on, you're preaching to the choir here. Like, we all get that I can't just be arrested for no reason, and I have constitutional rights, and Fourth Amendment's a thing, and the Fifth Amendment's a thing, and my protections need to be equal to everyone else's. And, these are all very good arguments, but I keep hearing the same ones over and over again, and it just gets tiresome, really. There's not really any sort of new rhetoric coming out of either side, really. It's all been the same thing for the last, 20 years. I've not heard much of any brand new arguments in the last forever. The most new topic I've heard so far, anyway, is since the NSA leaks, and that was in 2009. No, sorry, that was in 2012 or so. So it's not anything new. I'm not really seeing anything brand new coming out of either side of the parties. It's not that there's nothing new to talk about. It's just we're hung up on these old topics. Oh, in California, for example, there's a sheriff over there, or governor, I should say, who's just now realizing, it seems, that you have to have a warrant to steal information. On Thursday, California Governor Jerry Brown signed a bill into law that requires the police to get a warrant to use a Stingray device during investigations. The devices, which are also known as cell site simulators, are usually used to locate a phone, but can in some cases also intercept phone calls and text messages. Kind of a problem. The new law is called the California Electronic Communications Privacy Act, and imposes other sweeping new requirements to enhance digital privacy, and imposes a warrant requirement before police can actually access nearly any type of digital data produced by or contained within a device or service. Now, this is, of course, a good move on the side of the California governor, which is a weird thing that I never thought I'd say. But Jerry Brown seems to be doing a pretty good job with that. Now, I've not read the bill, so there's probably some caveat in there saying that, unless, there's always an unless or but, with the exception of, there's always phrases like those. The cops must get a warrant, except when, that's just how it is. And they may say when lives are in imminent danger. I can get that. And it's kind of like, it's illegal, as I've heard the example, it's illegal to jaywalk. But if there's an old lady walking across the street who's going to get hit by a car, you can probably jaywalk to get her. It was done in good faith. You never had the intent to break the law. You had the intent to do something that sort of supersedes whatever petty law there might be, which is saving a life. So saving a life generally supersedes anything else, generally. The Fourth Amendment is quite clear about these things. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, papers, houses, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. This is very plain, very clear, very easy to understand. It's not that these politicians don't understand it. It's that they don't really care. And more than that, they have an agenda. It's not that, they just don't get the Constitution. If we just told them the Constitution enough, maybe they would understand. Really, that's not what it is. It has nothing at all to do with that. It's just that they really don't care. They have a bigger agenda that they see. They can, they want to get stuff done that doesn't really have anything at all to do with constitutionality. And if they feel they can get away with it, that's what they're going to do. It has nothing at all to do with them not understanding Constitution. I mean, these guys, half of them are constitutional lawyers. They get it. They just don't care. That's the thing. They're willfully ignoring constitutional laws because they really don't care about constitutional laws. They're not really given any incentive to, because they keep getting away with breaking the Constitution. They're not being arrested for breaking the Constitution. It's just that, which is the law, by the way. It's just that they're constantly getting away with it. So there's no reason for it. There's no incentive for them to follow the law at this point. They keep getting away with it. There's zero reason not to. And that sounds disgusting because it is, but that's the simple fact of the matter. There's zero reason for them to continue on saying, well, I got to follow the law. So, they don't see it that way. They say, how can I do things without getting caught? That's generally the way of thinking. It's not, how can I do this the legal way? It's, how can I do this and get away with it too? If it weren't for those meddling constitutionalists, I'd have gotten away with it too, with my, illegal war in Syria or something like that, which is actually kind of happening too. The thing is, and I wrote this line that I thought was really good. For them, their God is the state, and that's a house made out of sand. It really is, and it's going to get swept away, and so will they with it. We have a bigger agenda. Our agenda is not, the continuance of the United States or national security or anything so petty as that, anything so backward thinking as that. Our agenda is the rights of all people. Yeah, even people who disagree with us. That's the thing. Because even a liberal, I'm serious, even a communist, you have a right to free speech. I will totally defend that to the end of time. You have a right to free speech. If anyone violates that, you know what? I'm getting on their backs, because that shouldn't happen. If a cop tells you, no communist speech in this area, that's a crime. He can't tell you not to say stuff. I might disagree with what you're saying, but you have every right to say it just as much as I do. Because if we start picking and choosing, then really, what's next? Nobody will have a right to say anything. So even people who disagree with me, you have every right to believe what you believe and say what you want, because that's how America works, or at least it's how it's supposed to work. That's how our ideals are. Your God might be the state. Their God is. If they're in Congress, their God is the state. They worship it. They do everything for it and themselves. They don't have any sort of perspective other than that. Everything is based on votes and analytics and demographics. That's what everything is based on for them. For us, it's based on ideals. It's based on rights. That's what we care about, which of course come from God. This is not man-made, what we're fighting for. For them, it is. The state is a man-made entity. It's artificial. It's unnatural. But rights are not. Rights are coming from God. These are things that we have naturally that cannot be alienated. They're recognized already. Constitution is simply a recognition of that on a federal level. And we're swiftly getting away from that, yeah. But they're still there. I cross the border, I still have a right to free speech, because that comes from God, not the state. What, you think the state gives you your right to do something? Come on. The state doesn't give you the right to do anything. The state may give you license to do something that's otherwise illegal, but the state does not give you any rights. It's supposed to protect them, but it doesn't give them to you.
This is a modern world. This is the modern world. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing of
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Sky Aerial Services uses advanced drone technology to give you a better perspective and depth of your property and project. We offer aerial photography and video for your business, farm, home, or advertising campaigns, as well as editing services to complete the experience. Call us at 423-521-0284 and see how we can help you tell your story about your business, property, or project. We work with real estate professionals, both commercial and residential, developers, engineer inspectors, surveyors, ad agencies, auto and boat dealers, mapping services, insurance inspectors, corporate marketing, charity events, weddings, and photographers. Our consultation is free. Call 423-521-0284. That's 423-521-0284, or visit our website, skyaerialservices.com. Sky Aerial Services. The sky is our limit.
Here you are, working to keep your customers happy and to manage your cash flow. IRS problems are the last thing you need, but here they are, flapping about you like vultures. Get help from Eric Pelton and his team of accountants at E.J. Pelton Company. Audits, letters, proposed return changes, 1099s, penalty threats. Pelton Tax Resolution Services brings peace of mind and helps you keep more of what you've earned. EJPelton.com. Offices on Brainerd Road and in Soddy Daisy, just north of the Bilo. That's EJ Pelton. Call 622-3156. Think ahead, 622-3156.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Soddy Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Soddy Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Soddy, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
The Fed raising rates, China's economy in trouble. Don't let headlines derail your long-term financial strategy. I'm Edward Jones financial advisor Patrick Neal. At Edward Jones, we provide the tools for a reasoned, disciplined approach to investing. Stop by my office next to the Target Shopping Center in Hickson or call me at 423-870-7894. That's Patrick Neal at 870-7894. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
Al Gore running is crazy. You're flying around in your private jet all over the world, and you want average Americans to care about the environment. Don't you think you should be doing your part as well?
Meghan McCain, weekdays at 7 p.m.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Hi, I'm David Tulis, inviting you to make the move with me 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. The David Tulis Show, featuring Nooganomics.com for Chattanooga and beyond. 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio. I'm Lillian Wu. A lot of students are in shock the morning after a shooting at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff.
As soon as it hits your home and your campus, pretty much everything feels like it's flipped upside down.
She was speaking to a Fox affiliate in Arizona. One student is dead, 3 others hurt, and an 18-year-old said to be a freshman is in custody. Police say 2 people have been cited after illegally landing a drone near the White House. D.C. and communities within a 15-mile radius of Ronald Reagan National Airport, part of the no drone zone. And Bill Cosby heading to court in Los Angeles. The comedian
being deposed for the first time since more than 50 women have come forward with sexual misconduct allegations. The lawsuit brought by Judy Huth accuses the 78-year-old of sexually abusing her. However, a court order will seal the document until at least December. A judge would determine at that time which parts could be made public.
Fox Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
You know, I do have a little bit of planning before the shows every day. You know, just a bit, just a tad bit of planning. And something keeps consistently happening to me, which is the news comes up, of course, at the half-hour mark of every show here on Hot News Talk Radio. And one problem that I keep having is Fox will pop up and then totally spoil what I'm going to talk about next. And it keeps happening. So I guess Fox is reading my show notes or something. But yeah, I was going to talk about the drone that landed at the White House today and the ludicrousness of that no drone zone for 15 miles. I thought it was 5, but now it's 15. Really? 15 miles is a huge amount of space. That's huge. A 15-mile radius, too. It's not just 15 miles in this direction. No, 15-mile radius around Ronald Reagan Air Force Base. Now, wow. That's kind of a huge surface area. 15 miles. There are people who live within 15 miles of airports. In fact, a good buddy of mine, actually going to go visit him today. Good friend of mine. He lives within like a mile of a Air Force base, you know, and in his backyard, you're going to tell me he can't fly his own drones? Come on. Not that he owns them or anything, but still, if he did, you know, you think he buys a DJI Phantom 3 and he says, I'm going to fly my drones today. And then suddenly someone says, oh, hey, I found that you were flying a drone on your own property, granted, but I found that you were flying a drone, and that's in violation of the FAA regulations. Now, I know you don't have a license from the FAA. You're not really under the jurisdiction of the FAA, but we're going to fine you. What should we fine you? Like, let's just call it 10,000 and make it even, right? I mean, that'll make it good, right? You flew a drone for maybe 5 seconds in your backyard. I think $10,000 is appropriate for the damages you caused. Oh, wait a minute. You didn't cause any damages? Well, we'll call it flying a drone without a license. Well, why not? Oh, you weren't flying it for commercial purposes? Well, you know what? We'll say that you created it's a public disturbance now, is what you did. That's what it was. That's what the FAA's like. And it's ridiculous. It drives me nuts, man, because what? You can't fly a drone in your own backyard? I'll tell you what. We're within probably 15 miles, actually, of the Chattanooga International Airport right now. Like, seriously, 15 miles, most likely, of the Chattanooga International Airport right now. So if if Eric Judd, he flies drones around. So if he took his DJI, I think he has a Phantom 2, and flew it up in the air for a little while, not even going above the tree line, he just flies it around, would that suddenly be a crime? I kind of don't think so. Or at least it shouldn't be. That's the problem we keep seeing, though, is crimes with no crime. There's no damage. That's what crimes are supposed to be based upon. I know I've made this argument before, but it still stands. If there's no damage, there's really no crime, right? Like, nobody's been harmed. There's not really been any damage to property, life, liberty even. So really, what's the deal? Now, I get, like, let's say as an example, and I actually heard this example yesterday, I believe. Let's say you have a kid, right? And you're smoking up a storm in your car. Your car's filled with cigarette smoke. That's gross, for one. And for another one, your kid's probably going to have nicotine addiction when the kid gets older and moves out of the house. I mean, that happens, actually. Now, I'm not saying that you can't smoke. I'm not saying you can't smoke if you have kids. But that actually does affect your children if your children are right there inhaling all this nasty, noxious gases that you're putting out. That's kind of a problem. So, yeah, you've damaged this child now, whether the child knows it or not. And let's say the child has the faculties to press charges against you or sue you. You actually could do that. I would say, actually, that is kind of a form of child abuse, to be quite honest with you. That's kind of a problem right there. And, yeah, that's a damage. So that would be a crime. We can discern a recognizable damage from that. It's not that you don't have a right to smoke. It's that you don't have a right to harm someone else with the action of smoking. I don't care if you smoke. I really don't. You can smoke all day. You can mess up your lungs if you want to. And I'm not just saying that to be passive aggressive. I mean, I'm serious. You can do whatever you want, so long as it doesn't hurt someone else. If you're smoking around my kid, I'll say, hey, come on. I got a kid right here. We're outside. Can you please step over here for a little bit, or maybe we'll walk away? That's probably what I would choose anyways, to just walk away, because you can always do that. It's better to avoid confrontations as much as possible. There's always options. I'm not going to step on somebody else's toes because he's having a good time. So that's that general principle, though, of non-aggression and no damages is what our legal system used to be based upon. And it still really is based upon it. It's just that we've sort of grown up so much that we don't really see our feet anymore. Our legal system has gotten fat. And when it looks down, it doesn't actually see a foundation, its feet anymore. That's how fat our legal system has gotten. And that really is how it is, because we have a foundation. It's still there. We just can't see it when we look down at it. And that's the problem that we have now, is there's been no damage here with this guy flying a drone around. If there's no damage to either property or person, I don't care what you do. Really. Nobody should care what you do. Now, it's different if you're like running around naked, in downtown Chattanooga. That's a problem. Because you're actually kind of harming kids. That's sort of a mental harm that goes on there. I can see that. I don't want to see that, but I can see that. And that's kind of the point, is nobody wants to see that. So that's damage that's been done. But if you're, say, walking around and you're downtown and you're skateboarding, you can do that. Or at least you should be able to do that. That's technically, it's illegal by city ordinance. But the act of skateboarding itself is not wrong. Now, if you hurt somebody, even accidentally, and I can see that happening, you accidentally hurt somebody, you're responsible for that. You are responsible for your own actions. But if you're just skateboarding around and you don't hurt anybody, then who cares? Lots of people get all uppity about it. Like, oh, did you see that kid skateboarding? Did you see that kid skateboarding? He could have hurt somebody. Yeah, well, could have doesn't mean did. And that's the problem that the FAA has now with this guy flying a drone around. Who cares? He didn't hurt anybody. No planes were grounded because of it. The helicopter didn't smash into it and crash into a building and catch it on fire so it collapses. That didn't happen. Nothing bad happened as far as we can tell. So what's the big deal? Now, that was the case in Chicago. Now, in, let's say, Washington, D.C., where there's a drone which lands near the White House, and you might argue that the Secret Service might possibly have some form of claim. Well, maybe. You see, what happened was, in Washington, D.C., there was a case of a drone being flown around, and they actually did find the guy who flew the drone. Police have cited a man after a drone landed on the ellipse near the White House, according to the Washington Post, which is where I'm getting the story from in this particular case. But again, was there a damage and was there an intent to harm? Because another thing is, if you intend to kill somebody or hurt somebody and you trip and fall, you still had an intent to hurt somebody. Now, there might not have actually been a damage, but you had every intention to hurt that person. I can see that being a crime too. That's another example. If you had every intent to hurt somebody, and you tried to, but you failed in the process, obviously you're someone who's going to be going around hurting people, so I can see that being a crime as well. Well, a man in the District of Columbia, D.C., was cited by police on Friday today for flying a drone near the Washington Monument and then landing it on the ellipse adjacent to the White House. That's what authorities said. Sergeant Anna Rose is a spokeswoman for the U.S. Park Police, and she said that the incident occurred at around 1:30 a.m. on Friday. That's pretty late at night, or early in the morning, depending on how you look at it. So it was probably certainly dark. Now, DC has a lot of lighting. I get that. So probably it wasn't as dark as we think of it being around here at 11 or 1:30 at night. But still, the person was known as Howard Solomon III from DC. His age has not been provided because really it doesn't matter. Authorities had initially said that the two people were cited, but the statement issued later Friday lists only one person being cited. The person was not arrested, but he will have to appear in court. So this is being treated similarly to a traffic ticket. So that's good. That's only a citation. But still, there should be no citation. Because again, nothing bad happened. Nobody was hurt. Rose said the operators were near the Washington Monument. A statement says the drone, described as an F-182 six-axis quadcopter, crash-landed on the ellipse and was retrieved by U.S. Secret Service agents. The Park Police said that this is actually the 9th time that an unmanned aircraft has been flown in a national park in the greater Washington area this year, and it's the 26th since 2013. In May, Secret Service officers stopped a person who was flying a small drone over Lafayette Square in front of the White House. In January, a recreational drone operator accidentally crashed a small drone into the White House grounds, triggering a lockdown of the White House. And on Thursday, the Florida postal worker actually landed a gyrocopter on the National Mall. And he was, he was kind of arrested for that because that's kind of a problem. The Federal Aviation Administration says that all airspace within a 15-mile radius of Reagan National Airport is considered a no-drone zone. But why? Again, let's consider this because we're not talking about on a legal basis as in within the legal system that we have here. Let's break it down to actual crimes as in a real damage. So this particular person, he's alleged to have flown his drone around in the National Mall, fine, and it crash landed on, say, this particular ellipse. I'm not sure what it is. I've never been to DC, but it crashed somewhere. Now, the first thing that we should assess is, has there been damage to this particular location where it crashed? Can we look around and say, oh, you scuffed the pavement here, that's not really a big deal. Or, oh, this plant got cut down, you need to pay for a new one to be put in there. Or, oh, you hit this kid, you should probably pay for his stitches. That should happen. And maybe a little bit of compensation going to the parents. But again, we're talking about restitution in that particular case. And that would be justice. Restitution is justice in this particular case. And yeah, the courts can enforce him to pay that. They can enforce the payment of that. I get that in this particular legal system. But really, again, we're talking about a violation of a licensure, which he never even had. So what's the deal? And it's not like he can be charged with operating a drone without license because you don't need one to fly one recreationally. The charge is that he operated a drone within a 15-mile radius of Reagan AFB, or not AFB, pardon, International Airport. And again, how is that even enforceable? 15 miles, they'd have to find you, for one. It's all a problem. And this is the problem that we have in today's society where we are charging people and seeing things as crimes, even though nothing bad ever happened. There's been no crime here as far as I can see, and yet he's being charged. That's ridiculous. We all know it's ridiculous. Probably even the people who arrested him know it's ridiculous. They'll say, well, I'm a rule of law. You know what? That's not even rule of law. What law are you enforcing? People like to spout phrases where they say rule of law. I like my rule of law, especially conservatives love to say that. But what does that even mean? What rule of law? Which law? Which ones? Because they're contradictions. You say, oh, I want my rule of law. Well, which laws? Because guess what? There are actually laws which are unconstitutional. Now, I would say that those are not real laws. You'd probably agree. Those aren't real laws, but they wouldn't possibly. What is rule of law? That would be the rule of the law in this particular location, but which laws are we going to rule? Which laws are the ones which rule? There's no real way to discern that. There can't be rule of law the way we have things right now. There can't be. There's no way, because the laws are contradictory. If we started enforcing every law in the books, probably everyone would be arrested, even retroactively for having broken the law back in 2006. There's all sorts of different laws that can be broken now. If you had true rule of law, everyone would be arrested for every little thing because everything's illegal, it seems like. Did you ever speed? You're getting a ticket now. If you ever ran through a red light by accident, you're getting a ticket now. Did you ever download a movie? You're getting a ticket now. All these different things. That would be rule of law as we have it now. That's rule of law as the law exists today. So you don't want rule of law as it is now. You want constitutional rule of law, as in just constitutional, and maybe some city ordinances and all that sort of thing. We don't need more laws. That's the thing. Quit passing laws. We don't need any more. What, lawmakers? Come on. Why do we need more laws? We can already discern this is illegal because this violates this. It's simple. Why do we need a specific law that makes it specifically illegal for all this minutia of little things that you could ever possibly do? You violated someone's space rights now. You walked too close to them. That's a crime. You jaywalked in a particular region, even though that's really no damage was caused. That's a crime now. We can ticket you for it. Who cares if you walk across the street when there's not a crosswalk? Did a car hit you? No. That's a preventative crime. That's a preventative measure. One of those preventative laws that keeps you possibly from doing something for fear of getting a citation, which doesn't actually stop anybody from doing anything. Ridiculous. It's to create a stigma of, well, if I do this, I might get signed or fined, I should say. You'll get signed too. If I do this, I might get fined. So it's a preventative law. But again, if no damage is done, who cares? That's the real issue, is that no damage was done. Thus, it's really not wrong. That's the thing. No damage has been caused. So who cares? Why do you care so much? That's the thing. Somebody grows pot in his backyard and he smokes it himself. That's it. Doesn't sell it. His kids don't know about it. He doesn't even have any. He lives on his own. He grows some weed in his backyard and smokes it occasionally. Why do you care so much? Who cares? He pays his bills. He goes to work. He pays his taxes. He also happens to have a little thing in his backyard that he has fun with. Who cares? No crime is being committed. No damage is being done, except maybe to his own self, but that's his right to do, isn't it? Yeah. So why do we care so much? Seriously. We're just making mountains out of molehills, and we're consistently doing that. We're consistently making mountains out of molehills constantly. We see some little topic, and we make it so big and say, oh, look at that. Oh, man. Look at what he's doing. Do you see that? Like this celebrity cult of personality that we have now, with the Kardashian family and the O.J. Simpson trial and all these different things. And it's like, man, it's not a big deal. It's like, really? The headlines I see, serious headlines on serious publications. So-and-so found dating so-and-so. Who cares? That's not a big deal. It's really not. I don't care if Jennifer Aniston's gotten remarried. It doesn't matter to me. She can do that. I don't care if Kim Kardashian's pregnant for the 40th time. It doesn't matter. I don't care if Rihanna's gained some weight. It doesn't matter. I don't care. Why is that a headline? We need to have selective apathy. That's the thing. I call it controlled apathy, actually. That's the phrase that I've coined, and you can use it. It's open source. Controlled apathy or selective apathy. There are certain things which we really just shouldn't care about because they don't matter. There are a lot of things which really just don't matter. And I know that sounds like the typical teenager thing to say is, I don't care, it doesn't matter. But some things actually really don't matter. Like these things I just listed with celebrities. It really doesn't matter. Different headlines about sports. Now, I get sports are important to a lot of people, but leave that for the sports section, I mean, come on. Miracle on Ice, I know that's an exception, and that really was a cool story. So I can see that one being kind of a big deal. But come on, like some story about Ray Rice or whatever. I don't even know who he is. I just know the name because I keep hearing it all over the place. I really don't know who Ray Rice is. I also don't particularly care, but I keep seeing the name all over the place. Or the Michael Vick dogfighting thing. That was bad, but that's not headline news. Michael Vick was found with some dogs that he was fighting. Yeah, that's bad, but that's not headline news. But man, like these 24-hour news stations, I'm convinced, by the way, that 24-hour news is like, it was this beginning of the end for serious newscasting. Because the 24-hour news, now there's a push to find something that you can talk about for 24 hours. With the news the way we do it here at Hot News Talk Radio, we find topics that are real and impactful for our area. I'm very selective about which items are impactful. I'm the news director, by the way, here at Hot News Talk Radio. If I see something that really doesn't matter, I'm not going to talk about it. You know, there's like some local celebrity does something. Okay, fine, but that's not news. There's going to be a band playing at Track 29. Okay, that's cool, but that's really not news. If you're interested in Track 29, chances are you already know what's playing at Track 29, or you listen to Texas Weekend Roundup on Thursday and you already know. There's other shows that can handle that, but you know what? That's not 5 o'clock news. 5 o'clock news is for the hard-hitting, real stuff that's happening that really matters. There's a car crash here. That matters. Somebody was stabbed. That matters. There's been a child trafficking ring. That stuff really matters. But cult of celebrity, whatever, that stuff is just so petty. It's a distraction from what's really going on. There's some international business deal going on. That kind of matters because that affects us. What's going on with Volkswagen? That matters because that really does affect us. These things matter. What doesn't matter is all this different just nonsense we keep seeing on the 24-hour news. Like, what's their headline right now? It's probably like Iran messing around with Syria. That doesn't really affect us. All right, right now, I'm serious. Right now, the headline is, could marriage performance reviews help relationships? That's not news. What kind of 24-hour news is that? Marriage performance reviews help relationships. That's not news. There's nothing newsworthy about that. There's nothing to talk about. Ugh, I keep seeing that all the time, and it's just getting ridiculous. Now, what does matter is over in California. Now, this is impactful because this has a broader stigma. This has not stigma, but a broader implication. Over in California, cops have to get a warrant to use a stingray device. Now, here in the States and here in Tennessee and Georgia, stingray devices, as far as we know, are not very widely used. The stingray devices, by the way, are devices which are used to spy on your cell phone, plain and simple. That's what they're used for. What happens is a cell phone is looked at and scanned by the cell site simulator, and actually your phone connects to it. And the cell site simulator simulates a cell tower. Your phone connects to it, not knowing any better, and you end up with a connection to this device, and it collects all the information that you would normally send over your cell network. That includes 4G data on the newer models. That includes your text messages. That includes whatever information you're sending out on your phone over the cell network. It's everything. It's kind of like a Wi-Fi honeypot. In fact, it's actually basically exactly the same thing as a Wi-Fi honeypot. And what those do is they're public Wi-Fi hotspots. Your phone connects to them if you select it, and you send information out through it, connecting to the internet, and it collects every information, all the packets that you send, gigabytes of information, terabytes of information, doesn't matter. Hard drives are cheap. And this information can then be used or sold or capped or blackmail, whatever. Any number of things can be done with this information. Any number of things. Things I don't even know about can be done with this info. And the cops, they don't really have your best interests in mind when they're collecting this information. I would say 9 times out of 10. Probably it's for statistics analysis or some fancy law enforcement term, or it's simply to, ticket enforcement. We found somebody was talking on their cell phone driving down the street. We can now track them down and arrest them or find them. That's going to be the next thing, I'm convinced, is little cell site simulators on the sides of the road, and it'll detect when you're texting, and your phone will have a link to your driver's license, and your phone will send out a signal, this person texted while driving, and then you'll be arrested or you'll be cited for doing that, or an automatic bill will be sent to your phone for you texting while also being behind the wheel, I should say. This sort of technology is possible, and I would not be surprised to see some state implementing that. Probably Illinois or New York. Those are always the 2 states which implement really dumb laws. Massachusetts sometimes, too, is pretty terrible about that sort of thing. Georgia and Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, not so much. Texas, definitely not. South Carolina tends to be pretty cool. Really, just the South is generally pretty great when it comes to laws, or lack thereof. And I like a lack of laws because it's still illegal to murder somebody. That's a crime. But buying an implement which could possibly be used to murder somebody, not a crime. No. I could buy right now. I could actually seriously go to the store right across the way right here, buy myself a Mosin Nagant, have it the same day, and bring it back here before the 5 o'clock news. I have no intention of hurting anybody. It's just a fun gun, and I kind of want one. And that's cool. I can do that. But anyway, This new law, which the California governor has passed, is called the California Electronic Communications Privacy Act. It's imposing other sweeping new requirements to enhance digital privacy and imposes a warrant requirement before police can access nearly any type of digital data produced by or contained within a device or service. Now, that's already sort of a thing called the Fourth Amendment, but this is more a state-level recognition that the Fourth Amendment is a thing. We shouldn't have to do that, but if you have to do it, you may as well, I guess. But the ACLU of California was one of the organizations, in addition to tech companies, including Google, Airbnb, Apple, Facebook, and other, which co-sponsored the bill. Obviously, it's within the tech company's best interest to ensure that your information is at least slightly secure against the feds, because there is a popular opposition to the police, so-called law enforcement. There's a popular opposition to that. And so that's what the market wants. And that being the case, it's in these different companies' best interests to ensure that your data stays safe from the cops, or at least appears to stay safe from the cops. So if something ever arose and it turned out that they were, say, selling your info to the FBI, and that ever leaked out, that would be a huge debacle. Yeah, loss of trust. And that's one of the worst things that can happen to a company, because that immediately means money leaking out. That's what's happening at VW, where there's been, to some degree anyway, a loss of trust. Now, I actually have a theory about that, where I think that cars which have been affected by this recall can be sold later at higher value than you may have even bought them for, or higher value than you would be able to sell them for normally, because these cars have higher performance, actually. Well, anyway, this is Digital Drive here on Hot News Talk Radio. Clutch with Keon Rose is up next right here. Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com. He's our resident sports expert right here, Hot News Talk Radio.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode.